Street lights blazing, wheels screaming. This is Dirty Crabs. 5 riders, all grit, no brakes. Clocking corners and clawing for the line in every crit they hit. When the pace goes redline, they go faster. Dirty Crabs. Fast, ruthless, all claws. Follow the swarm. We're coming for the...
All right, so let's get right into the action. This is our club ladder race, Crabs versus the Coalition Synoxium once again. And this was, so I definitely underestimated the Synoxium team. When I looked at their numbers initially, I was looking at their sprint power. It was right. They got some good sprinters. Nothing that, I was overly concerned about. Especially on a stage like this with the Astoria Line 8. Not quite flat, but also, not crazy, hilly terrain. So I went with the SL8 and the 4.5 Pro wheels because there is a couple climbs-ish in the race, and I wanted to make sure that, I held my own. Because, again, their sprint power wasn't a big deal for me, but their 5-minute plus power, that is definitely where the race was at. And that's where my biggest concern was at, and I thought I could, stay with them if I used the right wheels. And so, where I tactically messed up is I ended up going in pretty hard. Pretty hard on the first climb. And so as we get to the start of that climb, I've, just to check in on my weight progress, I'm down a total of 5 kilograms after 2 weeks. And so I wanted to put that to the test. My power's gone up. I'm still pushing towards the, trying to get the 4.2, 4.3 watts per kilogram for 5 minutes. And so I wanted to test my legs, see how I was doing on this climb. And so I pushed, pretty hard off the front. Kind of kept it up, kept my momentum up, holding, roughly about 6-7 watts per kilogram up this climb. And so, as you can see, I got a, 1-2 second gap off of just about everybody except for one Coalition rider. Now, when I came over to the top, eased off, didn't want to drop everybody, wanted my team to get back together, but also wanted to see what the Coalition guys were going to do. And so, as we start to come back together, no big deal. Got another climb coming. So right after this, we basically head downhill, chill for a little bit, and then we got another climb up, as you can see in the route profile. And so ultimately what that meant for me was that I was going to end up pushing again. And so as you can see, I'm off the front still. Again, everybody's a couple seconds back. What I didn't realize at the time was Mike was 5 seconds off the back. And so as we approach the second climb, I'm starting to push. We've got Michael Huang up front, who's holding tight with the Coalition guys. I start to push, and I'm like, all right, let me, give another strong dig. Let me push off the front and see what these guys are made of. Because in a race like this, if you can get people to kind of lose their power early and you can hold your own, then you set yourself up for a better finish. At least that's what I thought I was getting myself into. So as I start getting close to the top, I hear Riz come over the comms on Discord, and he's like, slow it down. Same thing, Radham was like, hey, slow it down. We got a couple guys off the back. I look at the chart and I see Riz is 5 seconds off the back. Mike's 12 seconds off the back. And I was like, all right, that was a little too much damage and not really worth the ultimate result, because now it's a 4-on-2 at the moment. We've got Michael coming up behind me, so 4-on-3. And so at this point, we're looking to stay with this group, hold as tight as we can to them, and hope that, we can slow down the pace enough for our guys to catch up. So they've got a guy that's, 2 seconds off the back. Again, Riz is a couple seconds off the back. And so as we start to, as we're continuing forward, I'm thinking like, all right, if Riz gets close enough, I can basically give myself a gap off the back, kind of ease back, let Riz latch onto my wheel, and then we can bridge up to this front group. No big deal. We've done it plenty of times. Riz is a strong racer. I see that he's, within 10, 15 meters of me. I start easing back ever so slightly. Give myself about a second or so gap between me and the group in front of me, trying to still maintain my pace, but at the same time, once Riz catches up, I'm like, all right, let's go. Let's do this. Let's bridge. We're only 2 seconds behind. No big deal. We start to push up again, and the front group keeps going. Now you see the front 3-4 guys are doing 4.5, almost 5 watts per kilogram. They are moving. And so Riz and I are pushing, and we're getting dropped. We're now 4 seconds behind. So that opportunity to latch back on was quickly fading away. And next thing I know, we're almost 10 seconds back. We've barely scratched the surface on being able to bridge up to this group, and they keep getting further away. And so Riz and I are still working together, working off the front. We've got, Mike is about 20 seconds behind. Coalition rider is about, I think, like 8 seconds or so behind. And so Radam and Riz are like, hey, telling Mike, like, hey, just, try to get close to him, see if you can, latch onto his wheel. But because that rider is more of a sprinter, they don't want Mike and him going to the line together, because, big chance that Mike will get beat on the line if they go on a head-to-head sprint. So the goal for Mike was to basically use his 20-minute power, his ultra strong diesel 20-minute power, and catch up to us. And so Riz and I are just pacing it as best we can, not going too hard, but also not going too soft. Now these rollers again are tripping us up a bit, because we're trying to push up beyond the 3 watts per kilogram. But as you can see, the front guys are holding between upper 2s to low 4s. And so that is, that's putting us in a position where we keep losing ground. We're about 13, 14 seconds back now, and just, again, not making up the pace like we thought we would. So ultimately, we end up just riding together from this point on, ultimately until the end of the race, because there was really nothing else, we could do. But Mike did eventually catch up, so I'll jump to that. So as you can see, after a few minutes, Mike eventually caught up to us, leaving the coalition rider almost 20 seconds behind, which was awesome, because the fact that Mike was able to not only push through him, but keep going, drop him, put us in a better spot points-wise. We ultimately needed to have our 2 front guys, who are staying with the coalition riders, who are now a minute plus ahead of us. If they were to come in first and second, and we take 6, 7, 8, or 7, 8, 6, 7, 8, no, 7, 8, 9. So if we take 1, 2, 7, 8, 9, points wise, that might have given us a chance to beat them. But this is where, our initial race tactics and, my blunder of going a little too hard off the front, dropping our own guys, and then not being able to bridge up when I drop back to help bring Riz back up, because that front group just, they took off, absolutely took off. Now, after the fact, I went and looked up their performance again, because I was just like flabbergasted. Couldn't believe how strong they were going off the front. All of us were talking about it at the end of the race. And then when I looked them up, I was like, oh, they're mostly sapphires and we're amethysts. So that makes more sense. Like, they're not only strong riders and all have really good 5 and 20-minute power performance, but they're also well raced. They're a team of experienced, successful racers with good power. And so that made more sense after the fact. And so as you can see here, It's now me, Mike, and Riz working together to get to the end, ultimately to make sure that the coalition rider that's with us doesn't catch back on, because he initially was starting to get close. And then once Mike latched back on, I was like, all right, we got to push it, because he was within 20 seconds and closing in. And we wanted to stretch that out. As you can see, we're almost 40 seconds out and growing. All right, so as we hit the final kilometer and a half here, hitting this sprint for the last time. Now, I've got to say, I really like this course. It is rolly. It is, it's got these, short, punchy, steep climbs where tactically can make a huge difference. If you're, if you've got a strong punch, if you've got a strong sprint, then these little short climbs really can make a difference for you in a race. As you can see, the guys with the obviously with the stronger power, the 20-minute power, ended up being more successful on this day. But I still feel like if we all made it over that second big climb together, I think we could have held our own for the long haul. It just didn't work out. It wasn't our day for that. Coalition did a great job of not only, getting us off early, getting us off the back early, but also staying strong, pushing hard. And even though they didn't drop our two front runners, for obvious reasons, because they are, they've got super strong 20-minute power, 5-minute power, they still ran an excellent race. The coalition team really did a great job of maintaining control of this race and ensuring that, they didn't give us an opportunity to catch back up. And that really made a big difference in this race. They just didn't let us catch up, didn't let us close that gap. Because I honestly believe, had we have all come together again, yeah, we may have struggled down the road and maybe something else would have happened and would have blown us up. But because they raced as hard as they did and basically controlled the front, we didn't get the opportunity to do that. And so as we come into the final closing 200 meters, I see Mike pushing, 6-7 watts, which I kind of chuckled to myself because I wasn't going to do that. Wasn't going to fight for it. Riz went off early. Mike pushed off, and I was like, it's not going to, the outcome of the race is already set. Nothing's going to change between the three of us if we cross the line in different positions. So I did my best to just kind of ease into the finish line. As you can see, my average power is very low, 2.7 watts to almost 2.8 watts per kilogram, 230 watts average, which is, I don't want to say it's a Sunday stroll, but it crossing the line at 150 beats per minute is low for me. Very, very low. So I decided, since I really didn't, I didn't push myself as hard as I could have because I wasn't challenging the front positions in the race, I decided to join the new Zwift race series literally right after this race finished. So I will jump over to that.
From the grit of the core to the grit of the grind, one Marine Corporal turns the fight toward the finish line. Zwift sprints, mountain attacks, and podium power, all fueled by sizzling ribeye and a no-compromise carnivore keto life. High-performance tactics, real-world strength, virtual speed. Ride hard.
So I hope you like that other intro. Still working on it, trying to fine-tune it. Got a couple different versions of it. And I've got to say, Sora and the AI applications out there really have come a long way. And just, I honestly think, looking at it, I think they have a metric of it's got to be 95% perfect or 95% good, but it has to have some sort of uncanny valley or some sort of weird glitch issue with it in order to maintain the perception that it's AI. Because I think it's become that good. And so, as you can see, I'm still in the Discord chit-chatting away with the guys, but decided to start this race. Now, at the time I started, I went into it with the mindset of, I'm just going to join the pen. I'm going to see how my legs do. I, had just finished a ladder race where, yeah, I didn't work hard, but my heart rate is still in the 150s. I still pushed myself. As you can see, my heat stress indicator, or whatever the HSI is, I think heat stress indicator, is at 4.6, 4.7, which means my body is in that heat training zone. Like I am, the effort's there. And so as we get going, I'm looking at the names of the racers and I see, oh, one of our dirt guys is in here. Sosa from the Deuces team. It's like, great. I got someone I can work with. I didn't message him at the time, and I thought about it, but for whatever reason, because I jumped into the race with less than a minute to go, I just kind of started riding and didn't really think about what I was going to do in terms of communicating with him. So I saw Sosa in there. I see Jay Hugh in there. I see Roy Imahara in there. And when I saw Roy, that was like, all right, this is not going to be the race that I thought it would be. I thought this was going to be me in a pen where my Zwift score would put me kind of in the middle. Thought I would be okay. My Zwift racing score is at 530 right now. And this pen was the 510 to 650. I went into it so quickly I didn't initially know what pen it was. I just kind of joined it. But when I saw Roy in there, I was like, oof, this is going to be a tough race. Sousa in there, I was like, I knew this was going to be hard because he's such a great rider, being on the Deuces team. Hoyt in there, again, another great rider. And I was like, all right. I'm looking at, again, I'm reading the names one by one, and I'm like, oh boy. I'm like, some of these names I recognize from ladder racing, and most of them we've lost to. Most of the names I've lost to. So I'm like, all right, well, I know I'm not going to be first, that's for sure. But I was like, you know what? Let me see how hard I can go with them. Let me see how long I can last. We're not really pushing the pace hard. As we round this corner, we were in the upper 100s, low 200s. I was like, all right. Approaching the first part of the climb, which I've got to say, I absolutely love going up the Clyde Kicker in this direction. This is my absolute favorite direction. I know other people may or may not like it, but as we hit this climb, I decide, you know what? I'm going to push hard. My legs feel good. Just came off of a ladder race where I'm still kind of energized, still buzzing from it. And doing a little over 7 watts per kilogram. See some other orange numbers light up. It's like, all right, end up pushing up to the front. No big deal. Eased off. I was like, whoa, let's see what precedent that sets with everybody. Now, I fully expected Roy to message me and be like, dude, what the heck? Because again, we've raced before, and I fully expected him to like, yo, what are we doing here? Because I definitely, of the people that know me in this race, should know that I am not the person that's going to be creating all the chaos in this race. Like, I am so underpowered and compared to some of these guys. And so we hit the second half of the Clyde Kicker, and again, orange numbers start going everywhere for a split second there. And just pushing as hard as I can. Now, as you can see, my draft just finished as we round this corner. And the reason why I used the draft bus when I did was because I needed that extra time in between the two climbs. Because these climbs aren't long. They're maybe 15 seconds, 20 seconds, something like that. Just long enough to really put a sting in the legs if you're pushing hard enough. But I figured if I could use the draft in between the climbs, that'll help me stay with the group, so I won't have to worry about trying to push too hard in between and then having to push hard again on these climbs. And so as we get started on the second lap, things just kind of chill out once again. And once again, hitting the second half of the Clyde here. I end up falling a little bit behind on that in-between gap. Again, because I didn't have the bus, I ended up using the feather. And so now I'm starting to push a little bit harder to catch up, push over the top, just so that way I can latch on to the back of this group. And at this point, I'm thinking like, all right, my legs are starting to feel a little tight. Hitting orange numbers back to back on these efforts. So I really need to make sure that I'm not going too crazy. Like, I'm giving myself room to, to recharge, to get the strength back in my legs, because I've still got another 2 laps of this to go, of Glasgow to go. And so I do my best to absolutely stay on the back of this group and not let myself get too far off. Because, yeah, that I already made that mistake once. Wasn't going to do it again. And away we go once again, up the second half of the Clyde and pushing orange numbers once again. And as you can see, more orange numbers light up this time around. Same thing with the first part of the Clyde. It was actually astounding, because I came over, and so as you can see, I came over, crossed the line, and the second fastest, but first one across the line, which I was super happy about, because on the third lap, you figure people would start slowing down a bit, but I feel like I'm still getting better. And when I looked at my numbers after the fact, you can't really tell on the power graph on the bottom, but our efforts are getting harder. Like, people are pushing harder, pushing faster up the Clyde. And so that was really like, all right, I'm pushing it. I feel good, getting over the top, but I kind of like hitting red line as I get to the top of the climb. And I knew, with the way everybody was looking, I knew that I wasn't sure how the climb up the Segura was going to end up. So on this final lap, as we're approaching the start of the Clyde, I am just looking at, what gear I'm in. Figured I need to be in 2.7, 2.8. And as you can see, red numbers light up all around, with someone pushing 11 watts per kilogram up the first part of this climb. Now, as I hit that corner there, I knew that I had to just keep pushing until that, initial start. I launched my power up, because again, with the draft bus, using it at this spot where I'm basically saving the maximum amount of watts I can save on this middle section, which I feel like it helped me for the full run of the Clyde, because it really, in my opinion, it made a big difference for me. And so as we start to make our approach to the second half of the Clyde, you can see I've still got draft boost going. Now, as we hit the base of this climb, my draft savings is almost 200 watts, and we're going up a 5%. As you can see, it went from 200 to almost 170. I'm pushing as hard as I can to make my way up to the front. Again, cross the line in first place, passing Roy by just mere millimeters. And so get over the front, happy again, once again that I crossed the line, in first place, even though I was second place in terms of fastest through the segment, which, no big deal. I'll take that, because I didn't work that hard to, take first place. The group starts to come together, and at this point, we've got 2.5 kilometers to go, and I didn't expect anybody to push the pace, because this being such a notably hard climb, I popped my power up. It's like, you know what? This is the only real time I'm going to use my draft bus. I've got some distance to go where it's sort of flat. Not really going to need it on the climb. From what I understand, this climb is not really that draftable. I've not ridden up this direction of the climb much at all. So I really didn't know what to expect. And so as we start making our way, someone in the chat's like, hey, this is where I bid you guys adieu. See you, great job. Almost like they're kind of leaving the race, even though they're up front. Like they're in the front of the race. So I wasn't sure what was going on there. I thought the person was going to peel off and just exit, but no, they stayed there. It could have been a declaration of like, hey, I'm going to, this is going to be the last time you're going to see me because I'm just going to power up the front and, no one's ever going to catch me again. So as I'm off the front, I'm thinking like, well, here's my chance to really see what I'm made of. I changed from, changed my SRAM from the second gear to the first gear, first chainring gear setup, whatever it is. And was like, all right, let me just push on the climb as best I can, holding, 5-ish watts per kilogram right now, pushing and really seeing what this, what I could do on this climb. And at this point, I'm still feeling okay. Like I'm hurting, my legs are hurting, but more my legs than anything else. I get to this little flat spot and I was like, all right, I need to ease up a bit because I need to catch my breath. My heart rate's in the 170s, upper 170s. Legs are hurting. Let me see if I can give a good, good effort up this. Everybody starts to pass me, which I was like, all right, well, here's where it's a make it or break it for me. I'm in 9th place right now out of 15. I know if I can hold this front group, then maybe I'll have a chance at the sprint if I could truly stay with them. There are some hard parts coming up. And so I'm looking at the terrain profile. It's looking very similar to the rooftop KOM where there's that kind of stair step up. And then, the second half is basically harder than the first half. The group is starting to get away again. Now, as we hit this ultra steep incline, 12, 13%, I just gunned it as best I could past this rider because I was like, all right, it's a short effort. My legs won't really feel it if I just sprint up that effort. And that gave me a little bit of a gap on him, but not quite enough because he's still kind of on my wheel. And so I see the group in front of me, see the Tron riders in front of me. I'm like, all right, let me see if I can catch back up to them. I'm trying to hold, around the 300 watt pace on the, on the climbing portions of this, trying to recover in the, what little flats there are. And so again, hit the 5%, start to push my power up again in the 4-ish, 5-ish watts per kilogram range, trying to really push the pace. Now this rider comes up next to me and that gave me a little bit of a nudge in the ego. I was like, all right, I've got a better setup than him in terms of bike. He's on whatever bike that is, which I believe is the Speed Max, because I don't think it's a Canyon. So it's definitely not the SL8. And he's on disc wheels. And so I'm like, he's got a heavier setup than me. If I can push the same performance as him, I'm going to do better inherently. I don't know what weight he is, but I know what weight I am, and I know how much better I'm climbing because of that. And so I was like, all right, I'm not going to let him pass me. I'm just going to stay ahead of him as much as I can, holding the mid 300 watts or so, catch this rider in front. And I was like, all right, here we go again. Just push, 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 get in front of him, hold it as best I can. And now as I'm hitting this, my heart rate's going into the 180s, and I am starting to feel it. I'm feeling it, I'm feeling it, I'm feeling it, and I'm like, all right, I just need to get across the line. It doesn't matter what happens after. I just need to get across the line. I don't want to ease my effort too much on these flat parts now because I know that I don't have much left, about 120 or so meters to go. I see this rider come up behind me, and I was like, all right, time to push as hard as I can. Got into 500 watts for a second there and just really dug in deep. Ultimately ended up staying in front of him and crossing the line in 9th place. And I've got to say, this Scotland after party, great course. Absolutely love it. Having done this with the group of riders that I did, especially after a ladder race, I was over the moon with my performance. I truly was happy with how I felt, how I did, whether or not my race score went up, down, whatever it was. Coming in 9th place ultimately out of 11, it looks like. I don't know who else finished afterwards, since it said there was 15. But ultimately coming in 9th place with the likes of Roy and Souza and Jay Hugh and others that I've raced with that I know are much stronger than me. I felt great. And you can see that in the chat afterwards. You know, I'm not going to, you know, put everything in here because we're going back and forth for a while. But everybody in the chat was like, this was awesome, great racing, and, you know, going back and forth. So ultimately, I'm going to do this again tomorrow, do my best to, you know, do this back-to-back performance, see how I do, and really just not only getting, you know, pushing my limits, but also getting used to my new weight in racing. So with that being said, again, I will bid you guys adieu. Have a great night, and I will catch you guys on the next race.
From the sands of Puerto Rico to the front lines of the Corps, one corporal went all in. Now he's trading rifles for race watts and rations for ribeyes. Welcome to Steak and Chains. Zwift sprints, keto carnivore fuel, and battle-tested tactics served hot and fast. Smash the subscribe